Eliza stood on the creaking wooden platform of the small train station, her heart a symphony of anticipation and dread. The station was nestled in a quaint European town, one that had seen better days, though its charm remained palpable in the scent of fresh bread wafting from the nearby bakery and the vibrant flowers spilling from window boxes. The sun hung low in the sky, casting a warm golden hue over the scene, but Eliza felt the chill of uncertainty creeping into her bones. It had been far too long since she had last seen Thomas, her beloved soldier, and each passing day chipped away at the reservoir of hope she had fought so hard to maintain. Every morning at dawn, she would wake with the sun, her heart fluttering with the thought that maybe today would be the day. She dressed in a simple blue dress, the fabric faded but lovingly cared for, and tied her long auburn hair into a neat bun. With a quick glance in the cracked mirror that hung by the door, she would whisper a silent prayer before stepping out into the world, her heart tangled in a web of longing and fear. The sound of the train whistle echoed in the distance, stirring a flurry of emotions within her. Eliza clutched the small weathered letter in her hand. It was one of the last letters she had received from Thomas, filled with affectionate words and promises of returning home. But as the war raged on, the messages grew sparse, each one laced with an undertone of despair. "I miss you more than words can say," he had written. The ink slightly smudged, a testimony to the hurried nature of his writing. "The days here are long, and my heart aches for the quiet moments we shared. Before we start, I'd love to ask for your support. Subscribing helps me keep creating and sharing these stories with you." The weight of his absence was like an anchor, dragging her down into the depths of hopelessness. Eliza glanced towards the horizon, where the tracks disappeared into the distance, and imagined the day when she would see his familiar figure stepping off the train, arms outstretched to embrace her. As she stood there, she often found herself lost in memories of their time together before the war. They would stroll through the meadows hand in hand, laughter spilling from their lips like the melody of a favorite song. Thomas had the unique ability to make the mundane feel magical. A simple picnic by the river became an adventure, filled with playful banter and shared dreams. They would whisper under the stars, mapping out a future that seemed so bright and full of promise. But with each passing day of the war, those dreams felt like fragile glass, shattering under the weight of reality. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Eliza found solace in the company of other women who gathered at the station, each of them waiting for their own soldiers to return. They shared stories and tears, forming bonds that transcended the pain of their shared experience. Together, they would knit blankets for the soldiers, their hands busy while their hearts remained heavy. Eliza learned to forge friendships in this somber atmosphere, yet each connection came with the implicit understanding that loss was a constant companion. She felt the heart-wrenching pang of loss when one of the women received a telegram announcing the death of her fiancé, the air around them thick with grief. The station itself seemed to echo the collective sorrow of its patrons. The walls, once vibrant with color, were now dulled by the weight of despair. The schedule board was a cruel reminder of time marching on, with trains arriving and departing, but seldom carrying the loved ones they so desperately awaited. Eliza often found herself staring at the clock, its hands moving with torturous slowness. Each tick felt like a reminder of the days lost, of the moments she would never reclaim. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a soft glow over the station, Eliza sat on a bench, cradling a steaming cup of tea in her hands. The warmth seeped into her fingers, but it did little to thaw the chill in her heart. She watched as mothers with children rushed past, their laughter ringing out in the air, a stark contrast to the silence that enveloped her. She closed her eyes, imagining Thomas's laughter filling the space beside her, his presence a comforting balm against the harshness of reality. Her thoughts wandered to the day he had enlisted, a day etched in her memory with painful clarity. They had stood in front of the recruitment office, the air thick with tension and uncertainty. "It's just for a little while," he had reassured her, cupping her face in his hands, his eyes dark with resolve. "I'll come back to you, Eliza. I promise." But as the months dragged on, the weight of that promise felt heavier, a chain binding her to the station with no clear end in sight. As Eliza continued her vigil at the station, she began to notice subtle changes in her environment. The townsfolk, once bustling about their daily lives, now wore expressions of fatigue and worry. Rationing had become a way of life, and the once vibrant marketplace had transformed into a shadow of its former self. The baker, who had always greeted her with a warm smile and a slice of bread, now looked haggard, his eyes reflecting the strain of scarcity. Eliza learned to navigate through the lines for essentials, bartering and sharing what little she had with her neighbors. The community, though strained, began to pull together, forging a resilience born from shared hardship. But the station remained her sanctuary, a place where time felt suspended and hope flickered like a candle in the darkness. As she waited, she lost herself in the rhythm of the trains arriving and departing, each whistle a reminder of the world beyond her small town. The stories of the soldiers she encountered, their bravery and sacrifices, filled her with a sense of pride, even as it twisted her heart with worry. Eliza often imagined Thomas somewhere far away, fighting for a cause she could hardly comprehend. She wondered if he thought of her as she thought of him, if her image danced through his mind like a cherished memory. With each letter that arrived, Eliza's heart would leap and then plummet as she read the words scrawled in Thomas's familiar handwriting. Some letters were filled with hope, while others were shrouded in shadows, a reflection of the turmoil surrounding him. "I'm doing my best to stay safe," he wrote in one, "but the nights are long, and the darkness feels all-consuming." Eliza would read those lines over and over, her eyes tracing the ink as if it were a lifeline connecting them across the miles. Time dragged on, the seasons shifting from the vibrant blooms of spring to the golden hues of autumn. The leaves crunched beneath her feet as she walked to the station each day, the sound a bittersweet reminder of the passage of time. She observed the world outside, the laughter of children playing, the warmth of families gathering, while she felt like a ghost, haunting the periphery of life without truly belonging. Each day was a battle against despair, but Eliza clung to the belief that her love for Thomas could withstand the storm. As winter approached, the air turned crisp, biting at her skin as she wrapped her shawl tightly around her shoulders. The station, now adorned with a layer of frost, felt colder than ever. The flickering gas lamps cast long shadows, creating a somber ambience that mirrored her heart. Eliza could sense the weight of loss hanging in the air, a palpable tension that enveloped the station like a shroud. The news from the front grew more dire, and the arrival of telegrams became a source of dread instead of hope. She had witnessed the heart-wrenching moments when families received the dreaded news, their faces contorting in agony as they crumbled under the weight of grief. Yet amidst the despair, Eliza vowed to remain steadfast. She would not let the darkness extinguish the light of hope within her. Even as her heart ached for Thomas, she continued to write him letters, filling pages with her thoughts, her dreams, and her unwavering love. She poured her soul onto the paper, each word a testament to her belief that he would return to her, that they would one day reclaim the life they had envisioned together. And so Eliza continued her daily pilgrimage to the station, waiting for the train that might bring her beloved home. Each day was a reminder of the love that burned within her, a flickering flame that refused to be extinguished, no matter how fierce the storm raged outside. Her heart remained open, ready to embrace the man she loved, even if the world around them was irrevocably changed by the ravages of war. As the days turned into weeks and then months, Eliza remained at the station, resolute in her belief that love would conquer all, even the devastating effects of war. She held on to the hope that one day the whistle of a train would signal not just another departure, but a long-awaited reunion, a moment that would change everything. And in her heart, she knew that love, no matter how battered by the storms of life, would always find a way to endure. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting a warm golden hue across the small train station, Eliza felt the weight of the world pressing down on her shoulders. Despite the beauty of the evening, there was a heaviness in her heart that overshadowed the picturesque scene. Each passing day felt like an eternity, and with every whistle of an approaching train her heart raced, only to plummet again when the faces disembarking were not those of her beloved Thomas. The station had become a second home to her, a place where time seemed to stretch infinitely, where the air was filled with the scent of coal and the distant sound of laughter from families reunited. But for Eliza, it was a place of longing and uncertainty, where the laughter of others only served to amplify her solitude. The rations of food had become a daily struggle, and she often found herself sharing morsels with other women who sat beside her on the benches, each waiting for news of their own loved ones. They were strangers bound together by the common thread of hope and fear, their conversations often drifting into the realm of what-ifs and maybes. Among the women she befriended was Clara, a spirited young woman whose fiancé had been sent to the front lines just weeks after their engagement. Clara had a vibrant energy that seemed to lighten the atmosphere around her, and Eliza found herself drawn to her resilience. They shared stories of their pasts, laughing over memories that felt so far removed from their current reality. Clara often reminded Eliza that hope was a powerful force, and they would often repeat the mantra, "Love endures." But as the days turned into months, even Clara's spirited optimism began to wane, and Eliza felt the shift in her friend's demeanor. One dreary afternoon, as rain poured down and the platform glistened with droplets, Clara and Eliza huddled under a shared umbrella. The sound of the rain pattering against the metal roof created a melancholic symphony, mirroring the somber mood that enveloped them. "Do you think they'll come back to us?" Clara asked, her voice barely rising above the sound of the rain. Eliza met her gaze, the fear reflected in her friend's eyes resonating deeply within her own heart. "I have to believe they will," Eliza replied, though the uncertainty gnawed at her. "They have to come back. They need to know we're waiting." As the war dragged on, the letters from Thomas became increasingly sporadic. Each envelope that arrived was a treasure, a lifeline to the world they once shared. But with each passing letter, Eliza could feel the distance growing, not just in miles, but in the emotional landscape that had begun to separate them. Thomas's words were filled with love, but they were also tinged with the harsh reality of the war. His descriptions of the chaos, the fear, and the moments of despair were jarring to her, painting a vivid picture of a world she could barely comprehend. The man she had known, filled with laughter and dreams, was slowly being replaced by someone hardened by the trials of battle. One particular letter struck Eliza with a profound sense of loss. Thomas wrote about a close friend who had been killed in action, a young man with dreams that had been extinguished in an instant. "Eliza," he wrote, "the world is so different here. I wish you could see it. It's beautiful, but it's also terrifying. I see things that I cannot unsee, and I fear I am losing pieces of myself." As she read those words, tears streamed down her cheeks, each drop a reflection of her helplessness. She wanted to reach through the paper, to hold him close, to tell him that he was not alone, that she was still here waiting. But the distance felt insurmountable, and the reality of their situation tugged at her heart like an unrelenting tide. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of the war pressed heavily on the town. The station was not just a place of arrivals and departures, it had become a somber reminder of the sacrifices made in the name of duty. Eliza often found herself wandering through the town, observing the changes that had come with the war. The once bustling market now echoed with the absence of familiar faces. Shops had closed, and the laughter of children playing in the streets had dwindled to a mere whisper. Ration cards were a constant reminder of the scarcity that loomed over them. Sugar, flour, and even the simple pleasure of a warm loaf of bread were now luxuries. One afternoon, while sitting on the bench at the station, Eliza watched as a mother embraced her son, who had returned home. The sight of their reunion sent a sharp pang through her heart, a longing so intense that it felt as if the very air around her had been sucked away. The joy radiating from the mother was palpable, but it was also a stark contrast to the emptiness she felt within. She caught Clara's eye and they exchanged a knowing glance, both understanding the bittersweet nature of love and loss. As time went on, the letters from Thomas became less frequent, and the silence began to settle around Eliza like a heavy blanket. Each day she returned to the station, she found herself grappling with the idea that she might never see him again. The thought was suffocating, a fear that crept into her dreams and lingered in her waking moments. Yet despite the despair, she clung to the memories of their time together, how they would walk hand in hand through the fields, their laughter echoing in the clear blue sky, their hearts intertwined with dreams of a future that now felt like a distant fantasy. One evening, as she stared at the fading light, Eliza made a decision. She would write to Thomas, pouring her heart onto the page, sharing her fears, her hopes, and her unwavering love. As she settled down at her small desk, the only light coming from a flickering candle, she felt a surge of determination. She would not let the war silence her voice. She would not let it extinguish the flame that burned for him. "Dear Thomas," she began, her pen gliding over the paper, "each day without you feels like a lifetime. I carry you with me wherever I go, in my heart, in my thoughts, and in every quiet moment. I miss your laughter, your touch, and the way you always knew how to make everything feel right. The world here is changing, but my love for you remains constant. I want you to know that I am waiting for you no matter how long it takes. You are my anchor in this storm, and I believe with all my heart that we will find our way back to each other." As she sealed the letter, she felt a sense of peace wash over her. It was as if she had sent a piece of her heart along with the words. She would deliver the letter to the post office the next day, hoping it would find its way to him amidst the chaos. But as the days turned into weeks, doubt began to creep in again. The silence from Thomas was deafening, and Eliza's heart felt heavy with uncertainty. She would watch the trains arrive and depart, each whistle a reminder of the love that was either close or impossibly far away. The station became a sanctuary for her sorrow, a space where she could allow herself to feel the depth of her longing without fear of judgment. One day, as the autumn leaves began to fall, Eliza noticed a gathering of people at the station. The atmosphere was electric, filled with a mix of anticipation and anxiety. She approached, her heart racing as she wondered what news had arrived. Clara stood beside her, her eyes wide with curiosity. "What do you think it is?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know," Eliza replied, her stomach churning, "but it feels important." As they drew closer, Eliza could see a group of soldiers standing near the platform, their uniforms crisp and their faces a mix of relief and exhaustion. Her heart skipped a beat. Could it be Thomas? But as the soldiers began to speak with the families waiting, the reality of the situation struck her. They were not returning heroes. They were messengers of loss. The news they delivered was heartbreaking, painting a grim picture of the battles fought and the lives lost. Eliza's heart sank as she watched mothers cry, fathers hold their sons tightly, and sisters embrace their brothers. The station, once a place of hope, felt heavy with grief. Eliza's heart ached as she witnessed the pain of others, knowing that she too was caught in the web of uncertainty. The laughter and joy that had once filled the air were now replaced with sobs and hushed whispers, the weight of the war palpable in every corner. In the weeks that followed, the atmosphere at the station grew heavier. The arrival of the winter chill mirrored the cold reality of their lives, and Eliza found herself struggling to keep the flame of hope alive. The letters had become sparse, and the silence was suffocating. Each day she would return to the station, but the thrill of anticipation had been replaced by dread. Then came the day that would change everything. Eliza had resolved that this would be the last day she would come to the station. The weight of waiting had become too much to bear, and she felt as though she was slowly losing herself in the process. She exchanged goodbyes with Clara, who tried to offer words of encouragement, but Eliza felt as if she was saying goodbye not just to her friend, but to the remnants of her old life. As she walked along the platform, the sounds of the station faded into the background. It was as if time had slowed to a crawl, and she was caught in a moment of bittersweet reflection. The world around her blurred, and she felt as if she were moving through a dream, the vibrant colors of life dimming to shades of gray. But just as she reached the edge of the platform, she heard the unmistakable sound of a train approaching. The whistle pierced through her thoughts, and her heart raced uncontrollably. Time seemed to stand still as she turned toward the sound, her breath hitching in her throat. Would this be the moment she had longed for, or would it simply be another reminder of what she had lost? As the train pulled into the station, the world around her faded away. The steam billowed in thick clouds, shrouding her vision. She felt as though she were trapped in a whirlwind of emotions, her heart pounding like a drum in her chest. There was a blur of movement, the crowd shifting as people rushed to greet their loved ones. But Eliza stood frozen, her eyes scanning the faces that emerged from the train, searching desperately for the one familiar countenance that would change everything. And then she saw him. Thomas stepped onto the platform, his uniform tattered and his face etched with the marks of war. The sight of him sent a jolt through her, a rush of emotions crashing over her like a tidal wave. Joy mingled with fear as she took a hesitant step forward, unsure of how to process the man who stood before her. "Thomas!" she gasped, her voice barely above a whisper. His eyes met hers, and in that instant, the noise of the station faded into silence. Everything else disappeared, and all that remained was the two of them. The love that had once burned brightly now flickered with uncertainty, yet it was still there, an unbreakable bond that had survived the trials of war. He moved toward her, but as he did, she could see the toll the war had taken. His eyes, once so full of life, now held shadows of pain and loss. The man she loved was still there, but he was also irrevocably changed. As he reached her, she felt the warmth of his presence, but it was intertwined with a sense of loss that threatened to overwhelm her. Eliza threw her arms around him, the embrace both a comfort and a reminder of the distance they had traveled. "I missed you so much," she murmured, her voice breaking with emotion. "I missed you too," he replied, his voice heavy with unspoken words. They stood there, wrapped in each other's arms, as the world continued to move around them. The train whistles, the laughter of families, and the chatter of the crowd faded into the background as they held on tightly, savoring the moment they had fought so hard to reclaim. But even in that embrace, a flicker of uncertainty lingered. The war had changed them both, and they would have to navigate the complexities of rebuilding their lives together. As they pulled apart, Eliza searched his eyes for the man she had known, the one who had filled her days with light and laughter. "What happened to you?" she asked, her voice trembling. He hesitated, the weight of his experiences settling heavily on his shoulders. "I've seen things, Eliza. Things I can't explain." Her heart ached at the pain in his voice. She wanted to reach into his heart and take away the darkness, to remind him of the love that had sustained her through the hardest days. "You're home now," she said softly, "and we will figure this out together." But even as she spoke, doubt lingered in her heart. The road ahead would not be easy. They would have to face the scars left by the war, both seen and unseen. As they stood together on the platform, Eliza realized that love was not just a feeling, it was a choice, a commitment to stand by one another through the storms that life would undoubtedly throw their way. As the steam from the train began to dissipate, the reality of their situation settled over them. They were together, but the journey ahead would require patience, understanding, and an unwavering belief in the power of love. As the sun set on the horizon, casting a warm glow over the station, Eliza took Thomas's hand in hers, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that they would not navigate the journey alone. Together they would find their way back to each other, one day at a time, one moment at a time. As the steam from the train began to dissipate, the reality of their situation settled over them. They were together, but the journey ahead would require patience, understanding, and an unwavering belief in the power of love. Eliza took a moment to study Thomas's face, the familiar features now softened by the shadows of his experiences. His eyes, once bright with youthful exuberance, bore the weight of a world torn apart by conflict. A flicker of recognition crossed his face as he returned her gaze, but it was layered with confusion and the remnants of fear. "Eliza," he whispered, his voice trembling as he spoke her name, as if saying it aloud would shatter the fragile moment they were sharing. "Thomas," she replied, her heart racing. She stepped closer, the space between them charged with an electric current of emotions. "You're back. You're really back." He nodded, though the gesture felt heavy, full of unspoken words that lingered in the air. The station, once bustling with the sound of laughter and chatter, seemed to fade into the background, leaving just the two of them, suspended in a moment that felt both infinite and fleeting. As they stood there, a cacophony of train whistles and distant conversations surrounded them, but Eliza could only hear the thumping of her own heart. She reached out hesitantly and touched his cheek, her fingers brushing against the stubble that had grown during his time away. "You look different," she said softly, the concern in her voice palpable. "War changes you," he replied, a hint of bitterness creeping into his tone. "It makes you see things you wish you hadn't." Eliza clenched her jaw, the weight of his words settling heavy in her chest. She had feared this moment, worried about the man who would return to her, but seeing him now, her love surged forward, drowning out the fear. "You're still the man I love, Thomas," she said, her voice firm yet gentle. A flicker of hope ignited in his eyes, but it was quickly overshadowed by a shadow of doubt. "I'm not the same," he said, pulling away slightly. "I don't know if I can be what you need." Before she could respond, he turned his gaze to the ground as if the weight of his thoughts was too heavy to bear. Eliza felt the distance growing between them, a chasm carved by the experiences he had endured. She took a deep breath, summoning her courage. "Then let's figure it out together," she replied, reaching for his hand, intertwining her fingers with his. "We can't change what happened, but we can choose how to move forward." He looked at her, surprise flickering across his features. The warmth of her touch seemed to ground him, pulling him back to the present. "I don't want to hurt you," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know," she murmured, squeezing his hand tighter. "But we can't let the past define us. We have to believe that love can heal even the deepest wounds." As the crowd around them bustled on, oblivious to the emotional tempest unfolding on the platform, Eliza felt the weight of their shared history pressing down on her shoulders. She had waited for 1,247 days, each one marked by hope and despair, and the thought of losing him again was unbearable. "Can we go somewhere?" Thomas asked suddenly, breaking the silence that had settled between them. "I need to talk to you away from here." Eliza nodded, her heart racing with a mix of anticipation and trepidation. She led him away from the platform, weaving through the throngs of people, their faces a blur as she focused solely on Thomas. They stepped outside the station, into the crisp air that carried the scent of freshly baked bread from the nearby bakery, a reminder of the familiar comforts that had anchored her during his absence. They found a quiet bench in a nearby park, shaded by the branches of an old oak tree. As they sat down, Thomas looked around, his gaze distant. "I never thought I'd come back," he admitted, his voice thick with emotion. "I thought I'd be one of the names on a list, a memory that would fade." Eliza's heart ached at the thought. "You're here now," she said, trying to infuse her voice with hope. "We can make new memories, Thomas. Together." He turned to her, vulnerability etched on his face. "What if I can't?" "Then we take it one day at a time," she replied, her heart racing as she spoke. "We learn to navigate this new reality together. I won't give up on you, I promise." Thomas looked into her eyes, searching for the truth of her words. "What if I'm broken?" "We all have our scars, love," she said, reaching up to cup his face in her hands. "But it's those scars that remind us of our strength. You're not alone in this." He closed his eyes, leaning into her touch as if it were a lifeline. "I've seen things, Eliza. I don't know how to forget." "Then we won't forget," she replied softly. "We'll remember together, and we'll find a way to live with those memories. You don't have to carry them alone." As they sat together, time seemed to stretch, wrapping them in a cocoon of intimacy. The world around them faded, leaving just the two of them, grappling with the intertwining threads of love and pain. "I've missed you so much," he confessed, his voice a husky whisper. "I've missed you too," she replied, her heart swelling with emotion. "Every single day." They sat in silence for a while, the weight of unspoken thoughts filling the air. Eliza could feel the tension in Thomas's shoulders, the remnants of fear still clinging to him. She longed to ease his burden, to wipe away the shadows that haunted him. "Tell me what you need," she said finally. "What can I do to help you?" He opened his eyes, meeting her gaze with a newfound intensity. "Just be here," he said, his voice steady. "Just be you." Eliza smiled, a sense of warmth flooding through her. "I can do that," she promised. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, casting long shadows across the park, Eliza felt a sense of hope blossoming within her. The journey ahead would undoubtedly be challenging, but they would face it together, one step at a time. "Are you hungry?" she asked suddenly, hoping to lighten the heavy atmosphere. "I could use some bread from the bakery. It's just around the corner." He smiled faintly, the corners of his mouth lifting in a way that reminded her of the man she had fallen in love with. "That sounds nice," he said. They stood up together, and as they walked side by side, Eliza felt the warmth of his presence beside her. a balm for her soul. The chatter of the park-goers filled the air, and she relished the ordinary sounds of life, grateful for the mundane moments that had once felt so distant. As they neared the bakery, Eliza glanced at Thomas, his profile illuminated by the soft glow of the setting sun. "What do you want?" she asked playfully. "Anything you want," he replied, his tone lightening. She laughed softly, her heart swelling with affection. "All right then, one of everything." They stepped inside the bakery, the aroma of warm bread wrapping around them like a comforting embrace. Eliza's gaze wandered over the rows of pastries and loaves, her mouth watering at the sight. "2 loaves of the sourdough and one of those flaky pastries, please," she called out to the baker, who smiled in return. As they waited, Thomas leaned against the counter, stealing a glance at Eliza, and she felt a rush of warmth at the way he looked at her, as if he were finally seeing her again. "Why did you come back?" he asked suddenly, his voice low. "I promised I would wait," she replied, her heart racing. "And I meant it." He nodded slowly, the weight of her words settling over him. "You're incredible, you know that." Eliza shrugged, a playful smile on her lips. "Just a woman who believes in love." When the baker placed the bags in their hands, they stepped back into the evening air, the cool breeze rustling through the trees. As they walked back toward the park, Eliza felt a sense of peace enveloping them, the chaos of the world fading into the background. They settled back onto the bench, the warmth of the fresh bread in their hands, a reminder of the simple joys in life. Eliza tore a piece of the sourdough, handing it to Thomas. "Here, try this," she said, watching his reaction as he took a bite. His eyes widened in delight, and for a moment the heaviness in the air lifted. "This is amazing," he said, the smile on his face genuine. Eliza grinned, her heart swelling at the sight of him enjoying the moment. "See? We can find happiness in the little things." They continued to eat in companionable silence, the weight of their earlier conversation lingering in the air, but softened by the warmth of their shared meal. "Do you remember our picnic by the river?" Thomas asked suddenly, a hint of nostalgia in his voice. Eliza's eyes sparkled with the memory. "Of course. You insisted on bringing that horrid cheese, and we ended up laughing the whole afternoon." He chuckled, the sound rich and warm, and Eliza felt a thrill at the shared memory. "I was convinced it was a gourmet delicacy," he said, shaking his head. "I was so wrong." They laughed together, and in that moment Eliza felt a flicker of the connection they once shared. It was fragile, but it was there, like a flickering flame that refused to be snuffed out. As twilight descended, the park began to empty, the crowd thinning around them. Eliza looked up at the stars beginning to twinkle overhead, feeling an overwhelming sense of gratitude wash over her. "We'll find our way back to each other," she whispered, her heart hopeful. Thomas turned to her, his expression serious once more. "I want that, Eliza. I want to try." "Then we will," she promised, her voice steady. "One step at a time." As the last remnants of sunlight faded from view, they sat together in the soft glow of the moonlight, the world around them quieting as they savored the simplicity of being together again. Eliza knew there would be challenges ahead, but with Thomas by her side, she felt a renewed sense of hope. They would navigate the storm together, hand in hand, and she believed in the power of their love to heal even the deepest scars. Together, they would face the unknown, ready to embrace the future that awaited them, one heartbeat at a time.